to the Weekly Bioanalysis, a Kcas podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the 49th episode of the Weekly Bioanalysis, the official podcast of Kcas Bioanalytical and Biomarker Services. Kcas is a bioanalytical CRO serving the pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical services for over 40 years. My name is Dominic Moreno, and I've been in the ligand binding assay and flow cytometry space for over 26 years. I'm here with my co-host, John Perkins.
Hello, I'm John Perkins, and I have been in the bioanalytical LCMS space for over 26 years too.
John and I are senior scientific advisors at Kcas, and either or both of us are available to answer any questions you may have regarding this podcast or any of Kcas services. I'm located here in the Kansas City area. John is in upstate New York, and our producers are in Missouri and Kansas as well. So we're kind of all over the map. We are thrilled to have you listening to our 49th episode of the podcast, which is now available virtually everywhere. Wherever you choose to find and play your podcast, you can now likely find the Weekly Bioanalysis. We welcome all of you, whether you are joining us for the first time or if you're a regular listener. As many of you know, if you've listened to any of our previous episodes, we started the podcast when COVID restrictions prevented us from continuing business as usual. So we were unable to meet face-to-face with colleagues, but we wanted to continue to communicate with all of you. The podcast was an idea we had always had, but it suddenly became the perfect medium to employ. So today's podcast, we have an amazing individual. She is a special guest for us. Her name is Sonia Hall. She is the CEO of BioKansas. Sonia?
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the session today.
So as always, today's podcast will be a review of the latest news and resources. And typically we talk about COVID and then non-COVID issues and maybe some investments. And then it's this week, it'll be a discussion of how great BioKansas is. And you'll get to know Sonia and all she's doing for the region. Then we'll wrap up. Usually we give a little teaser about our next episode. Of course, we've got our 50th coming, so that'll be fun. But we look forward to a fun episode. To kick us off for podcast number 49, John is going to go over today's podcast topic a bit before we jump into the news and resources. John.
So, yes, thank you, Dominic. As usual, we'll go through the news section, talking about COVID and non-COVID items, and then we'll focus on Sonia and BioKansas, looking at who BioKansas are and their mission, the Kansas ecosystem and inclusion of diverse populations, the impact and benefit to Kansas communities, focus on attracting and retaining talent, networking events and opportunities, and upcoming events for BioKansas.
Well, John, we got a jam-packed show, so why don't you just get us started right away with the news and notes.
There's been a number of vaccine updates, a few brief things we can run through here. First up, Pfizer plans to seek FDA nod for COVID-19 shots in kids 5 to 11 after positive data. So this is more of the push to expand the accessibility of their vaccine to other populations that so far haven't been able to be vaccinated. And the Pfizer and BioNTech basically say their vaccine is safe and has generated a strong antibody response in kids aged 5 to 11. So they're pushing for emergency use authorization for that, and it'll be bring it on for the kids.
Yeah, John, this is something I think a lot of parents, even our marketing team, is excited to learn that 5 to 11-year-olds can now. It's not approved; they just can get it. Is that what this means?
It's basically it's Pfizer reporting their data to say yes, it is. It's showing similar response in the 5 to 11-year-olds as in the 16 to the 12 to 16-year-olds or 16 to 25. So it's performing in that age group as it has in other age groups before. Right. So on the basis of the data, they're saying now we want to move forward with emergency use authorization. So it's not there yet, but it's an important step forward to say that yes, it will be coming.
Yeah. And there's the key, right? That emergency use authorization will probably get approved. That gets fast-tracked. Maybe it takes a month or something. But soon, and very soon, you will be able to get your 5 to 11-year-old shots. And it's very interesting stuff, right, John? So there's a 30 microgram dose that was used for the 16 to 25 age group. They used a 10 microgram dose, which is, obviously 1/3, but it's still very effective. Yeah, really, really great stuff. I think there's a lot of people that will breathe a sigh of relief. I think, although there may, we still got people who don't want the vaccine in general. But I don't know about you, John, but I would, if I had a child between the ages of 5 to 11, I would definitely get them
Sure,
vaccinated.
it's given me flashbacks to being at primary school and lining up in the corridor outside the nurse's office with your sleeves rolled up, waiting for your next shot. It's like it's on the way, So
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
good
it's.
stuff.
I want to quote Pink Floyd's "Another Brick in the Wall" or something, but I hear you.
But they base so, and I mean, in addition to this, Pfizer's saying that date to readouts for age 2 to 5 years and 6 months to 2 years, or they could have that in the fourth quarter this year. So, the way rate things are going, they could be covering the whole population soon. Well, yeah, soonish with emergency use authorizations. And it was interesting that the American Academy of Pediatrics reports of September 9th, nearly 5.3 million children have tested positive for COVID-19 since the start of the pandemic. But the even more telling is that nearly
Yeah,
500,000 of those cases have come in the last 2 weeks, where the Delta variant is. The Delta variant, we'd always talked with the previous variants that the young population seemed to be less affected. Delta seems to change that, where actually young people are getting affected proportionately as well. So this is timely, and
yeah,
certainly on this article there was a quote from Dr. Jay Portnoy of Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City saying he wished that they were available earlier because of the effect of the number of children they're seeing in emergency rooms right now. So yeah, this is good news, and going in the right
definitely.
direction.
Definitely. And I love that there's a shout out to Children's Mercy Hospital here in Kansas City. Very big. That's what the Sporting KC plays in Children's Mercy Stadium, in case you
Oh
were
really?
wondering.
I did
Oh, yeah.
not go digging for that. He was
Yeah,
the
no.
person in the article, so I was like,
No, Children's.
I don't know if I've
Yeah.
said this to you before. So I've been in this country now for 27 years, and for 25 of those years I had absolutely zero interaction with Kansas City. Ever since I answered the ad for the job with KCS, I don't seem to avoid Kansas City. It pops up everywhere, not just with my job, but in the media, and yeah, it's
Yeah.
become
That
like everywhere. So yes.
Yeah, that started when the Royals won in 2015 and then the Chiefs won in 2020. That's the only reason why you hear about us. No, I'm just. But no, John. I mean, this is this. When we read, we're sitting here looking at this, right? Like there's nearly 500,000 of the 5.3 million cases that children have tested positive have happened in the last 2 weeks. This couldn't come at a better time.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
all of this is, you wonder if there's been some sort of, due to the unvaccinated populations, vaccinated populations, I think of as like immunological pressures, right? In terms of the virus sort of, um, kind of it's resistant in those of us that are vaccinated. And then if you're not vaccinated, it definitely appears to be maybe, I don't know, more virulent. The only saving grace here is that it seems like the Delta, although very contagious, is not as lethal as other strains. At least that's some of what I had been sort of researching. So anyhow, John, this is great news, and excited to see when the 5 to 11-year-olds will get approval or at least emergency authorization. And then for those that are 2 to 5 years of age, stay tuned. I think Aaron and Jeremy, our producers, that should be coming along soon as well.
Sure. So let's move on. Next topic is still on Pfizer, and there's been a lot of rumbling in the media about Pfizer having data to justify a vaccine booster, which would be a third shot for those of us who have it, compared to obviously a lot of places where no one's had their first shot. But there was an AdCom meeting, the FDA advisory committee meeting, where the committee actually first of all said they voted against authorizing boosters of the Pfizer vaccine, but then when the question was reframed, the advisory committee said yes for people of 65 and older, and those at high risk, including healthcare workers, teachers and daycare staff, grocery, so frontline staff, they would authorize a booster for that, and the FDA has gone along with that, and actually that has been that's moving forward. So basically, the FDA authorizes the Pfizer's vaccine booster for seniors, those at high risk for severe COVID-19.
Yeah, I don't envy this, right? I think this is a very tough moment for anybody who has to review this and think about a path forward in terms of an additional booster. And some of obviously there was that huge Israeli study that showed that maybe it wasn't effective, and trying to argue that herd immunity was really part of it. But I think there's just still a lot of unknown, John. It
Sure,
seems like
absolutely.
we're kind of in that place where we were maybe 18 months ago when we were starting to talk about the actual vaccine, right? This feels a little, I don't know if rushed is the word. It just, I don't know. I would take a third shot. I don't know. I'd take a fourth shot, fifth shot. Don't ask me. I'd go until they
You're a
told me not
vaccine
to.
junkie.
Yeah, but with the uptick, I want to just, I don't know. I wonder if and I imagine there are people who are probably getting the third one. We got people stealing vaccine passports. Who knows what people are doing to get another shot, right? So, but I do, John, I hope you agree. It's kind of at that point where we're you don't envy the people who got to make these decisions because
Sure,
the data's
absolutely.
not there yet.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of still to be determined, and
Yeah.
some of the studies that are being done, you just want to make sure people maybe take a little more time, make sure the data looks better. But with that being said, we're also, we want to make sure we're not going through any more lockdowns, and this is an effective way to do it. So
I think it's the thing. It's a case where you got the company who produced the vaccine saying one thing, the FDA saying not quite sure about that. So it's not quite as as clear cut as it was when the vaccine was coming through for authorization. That said, I mean, this doesn't affect me. I'm thankfully I'm not in that 65 and older age group or in one of the frontline groups. I'm happy for those people to have it if it helps them and helps them stay healthy. So I really have no problem from that perspective.
Yeah, I think it's a good excuse to reach out to my sister, and who's a nurse there, and ask her opinion on this and get some thoughts, John. I wonder how, if I'm I'm trying to put myself in that position. Well, suddenly I'm feeling a little bit like a guinea pig, right? I'm like, oh, I don't want to be that. So, but anyway, maybe I'm a cynic today on a Friday, right? But
yeah, you need more coffee inside
and we've got a guest. Our poor guest is probably gonna wish she didn't show up today. No. So, John, I think the next one is one that the next story here, we're gonna, if it's okay, we'll move on.
Sure,
right?
absolutely, yeah, sure.
Yeah, this is no surprise, right? So they're gonna maybe get 2 doses of the Johnson & Johnson, which we haven't heard too much about, right? People have been hating on that one a little bit, in my opinion, but we know that it's still something that can help with containing this and globally. So tell us, tell us a little bit more about it.
And I wonder if that's a bit of a perception thing. So basically, the headline is 2-dose version of Johnson & Johnson shot 94% effective against COVID-19, study finds. And the J&J vaccine, when the vaccines were being developed, it was one that showed good efficacy with a single dose. So J&J went that. But I think because people got so used to talking about the 2 doses, suddenly it was perceived as less what the hell, less good.
Yeah, less effective. Less.
Yeah, exactly. Because it was only 1 shot rather than 2.
Good is a good word too. That's technical term.
So, I think, I mean, I don't think it's any surprise that they were doing further studies to really see what made sense. And the way they've done it is they were checking people, looking at the gaps between the first and second dose, and they certainly think it's better to have a larger gap before the second dose, and it's I think it's people given a booster shot about 6 months or longer after first dose of the 12-fold increase in antibodies compared to a 4-fold increase for people who got a second dose at 2 months. So I mean, it's but this is all part of vaccine development. We know that there's other vaccines out there that you have these 3 steps. Like, for example, I think it's one of the hepatitis ones. The third shot is about 18 months after the second shot. So this is all part about vaccine development. It's I think it will provide reassurance to people who've had the single shot for the J&J to know that they get the second shot. It's really going to help their their protection to the virus. So I mean, it's just like I say, it's more good news.
Yeah.
And I think it's this one. This one you feel much more comfortable with. I'm not surprised that like I say, it's the second shot for one that showed efficacy at one shot. So this one you sort of think that this is in line with what we expect, as opposed to the need for the third shot on the Pfizer and Moderna.
And it's the more, I don't want to say traditional, but it is the more protein-based approach here. So it's not the mRNAs. And this is right in line with, as you mentioned, the hepatitis is an example of where you need 3. It's not surprising a second. Very good numbers, right? 100% protective, 94 for those against moderate to severe COVID-19, and then 75% worldwide. I think that's where, for whatever reason, the Johnson & Johnson, due to remember the manufacturing issues that occurred, John, kind of derailed it a little bit. And then there was some less efficacy. And now, I think if I were a Johnson & Johnson, if I'd been vaccinated, I'd be seeking out a second shot as soon as they'd made it available. I don't think it's available. That's not available yet, but it should be very soon.
Yep.
But John, we know these are all of these. We're rooting for all of them, right? There's no. We just want this to be, pandemic. I don't know. Over is the word that comes to mind, but certainly we want to be able to live our lives as it's as free as we can get. And it's as we've discussed many times on this podcast, it's not about just the U.S. or Europe. It's got to be a global effort. Excuse me. So great stuff, John. And
just a couple of things on this. So basically, J&J have said it will submit all this data to the FDA for potential consideration for adding a booster dose and perhaps for consideration to authorize a 2-dose regimen. So again, this is not there yet, but they are pushing to have this authorized. The other thing, the 75% worldwide, it part of that reduced efficacy, they're wondering if that's because of the more prevalent beta variant in those regions. And it's interesting, there's a couple of articles, the next one refers to it again, that they're saying that the beta variant is a bit more evasive versus the vaccines that have been authorized. So although we see the Delta as being more infectious, it actually the vaccines do combat that better than the beta and the mu, which has been talked about but hasn't really penetrated to the same extent. So it's like I say, I thought that was an interesting aside to this that I hadn't necessarily realised. So I'll roll into the next one, and this was a news item thrown in at the last minute because, as we've said multiple times, it isn't just about the vaccines that are approved. Because the worldwide population is so large, we need as many vaccines as possible. And if they take different approaches, we don't care so long as people are out getting vaccinated and kept healthy. And there's a company called Clover Biopharmaceuticals in Chengdu, China, who have an adjuvanted protein vaccine, SCB 2019, which held up against a range of variants in a phase 2-3 trial, teeing Clover up to seek approval of the relatively stable jab and deliver it to COVAX. So this is one Chinese company, and actually the headline is, it says tames Delta in pivotal study. So this is one part of its attraction is it's stable, thermally stable, so it becomes a good candidate, assuming that it does become authorized and approved. It's a good candidate for rolling out in developing countries where there's not the same cold chain storage, etc.
Yeah, same. This is right along the lines as the J&J, where you do not need that cold chain as you do for the mRNAs, but 30,000 person trial, John, very big in 4 continents. This is what it's I think a lot of the other vaccine manufacturers get the limelight, but this is good deal for Clover and really helping with global vaccine campaign here, and looks very effective. And then one of the interesting parts of this study, John, is half of the subjects had been previously infected.
Sure.
So that's a new thing. So that becomes part of the, you wonder if now I'm going to take a small sidebar, right? Like you wonder if this had gone when nobody had COVID, if it would be as effective, right? I think there is you'd like to think if people are surviving the infection, that getting a vaccine on top of it would only help protect you even more, right?
Yep.
So, but it's good that they studied it, and clearly that's going to be the case, right? Very few people are going to be, and this actually, sorry, random thought here, another one. It leads to, well, if I've got the Pfizer vaccine, can I go get the J&J vaccine, or could I get the Clover vaccine? Right? That's really so. There's going to be a lot of studies out there, John,
Sure.
and we hope that the pharma and biopharma companies continue to work hand in hand as they have in the past. You would think they would, but I think that's the next. Maybe in 6 months to a year, that's what we're going to be talking about. Not just a given vaccine regimen, and even as I sit here, I'm like, I wonder if I would go take the Moderna one if next year if they roll out the next version of this.
Well, it's interesting that talking of the booster thing, if people there's already, I've seen a couple of mentions that if the Pfizer booster is authorized, it shouldn't be for people who have previously had the Moderna. It should only apply to people already had the Pfizer. So I think there's going to be a lot of discussion on this, but that's the direction it's going right now. I think
we're going to move on though, right? Because we got a guest.
Very quickly, just to say that when you said about the Clover trial, we haven't talked about Clover before today, but half the subjects haven't been infected, half hadn't. Basically, the efficacy of the vaccine was similar between both, so it did help. It did give additional protection to those who've been previously infected. So
no surprise there, right? That's not a surprise at all.
Yeah, but just emphasising that. So let's move on to the next topic, which is plays a little bit on what we talked about last week. They shunned COVID vaccines, but embraced antibody treatment. And this is basically, in a nutshell, vaccine-resistant Americans, so people who are avoiding the vaccine for whatever reason, have embraced the antibodies developed by Regeneron and Eli Lilly as the means to being cured. And it's happened is that orders particularly in regions where the virus is a bit more rampant right now, orders are really skyrocketing, and the supply chain is becoming hit. So we're running into a shortage of it. And it's interesting. I mean, obviously, I think someone talked in the article that basically, a vaccine is protecting against the likelihood of becoming infected, and so people are avoiding that. But they're happy once they get infected, they're lining up to get antibodies, which are massively much more expensive than vaccines, and much more intrusive to have administered, and much more taxing on the health system. So I just wanted to throw out there.
John, I'm shaking my. Sorry, John, I'm shaking my.
Yeah, I've said my piece. I'm going to let you go with it because
I don't even want to talk about it because this is insane. This is exactly what we talked about a few weeks ago, where people who are saying, "Oh, I don't need to get vaccinated. I'll just get these therapeutics." But these therapeutics are incredibly expensive. This is for people who actually may need it, not for people who are healthy who should go get a vaccine. And so I'm like angry at reading this. It's like this is the very thing that's exhausting our healthcare system and pushing our nurses and doctors to the brink, because people just don't want to get a $20 vaccine. Instead, they want a $5,000 infusion that takes 6 hours, when the reality is that if you had just taken a vaccine, we could maybe treat somebody who really needs something. So it's
okay. Just one quote from this, because I think this says this. It's clogging up resources. It's hard to give, and a vaccine is $20 and could prevent almost all of that," said Dr. Christian Ramers, an infectious disease specialist and the chief of population health at Family Health Centers of San Diego. Pushing antibodies while playing down vaccines, he said, was like investing in car insurance without investing in brakes.
That's a good line right there. And like investing in car insurance without investing in brakes. Sure. Like that. Yeah. I don't have anything to add because I'm going to say something I'm going to regret, or they're going to have to bleep out or something. So let's move on to more great news in the world. Although
this is very quick, and actually I think the more I read about it, I think it's a little bit more blown up, but it's worth mentioning. The headline is France bans unvaccinated Americans from entering. Actually, they haven't. If you're unvaccinated, you just have to have a health, a negative test within a short time frame before you travel. I mean, it's not just France either. Other countries have are talking about it. Denmark and the Netherlands have updated their restrictions requiring proof of vaccination. Sweden has banned all US travelers regardless of vaccination. This is in reaction to the recent rise in cases we've seen. Spain has changed its entry policy, requiring them to have a certificate providing double vaccination. Now, the reason why I sort of still kept this on, even though I think the article is overstating things, we're hoping to go to EBF in Barcelona in November, and looking into this, what you need to do is you have proof of vaccination, and then you actually have to log on to a website with the Spain's Ministry of Health, and if you, I'm going to start moving on this and may report back on it. But you basically fill in your details, and when it comes to time of travel, they'll send a QR code to you, which then enables you to travel to Spain. So I don't know how user friendly that will be, but I thought let's keep that in. So I think we may see more if we don't get things under control. We may see more of this, because why would you want unvaccinated people to come into your country? Because it's a risk of flare-ups locally. So I mean, well,
John, I'm scratching my head and shaking it, because I don't know why the U.S. is. I mean, I get why these countries are doing it. I'm not against what they're doing. It's just, why is the population of the U.S. not
sure,
listening to the science?
exactly, yeah.
That's like the most overused phrase. It's like, oh, you're on mute. Follow the science is going to be the next one, right? But like, this is just because of our behavior as a country. This is the cause. This is what the global, kind of the world views us. And as for your visit in November, I hope you get to go to the EBF. I think that would be
I'm dying to
nice
travel somewhere
yeah.
interesting.
and but it's not surprising. And I think as a whole, these are good precautions that they're taking. And then this is overstated, right? France bans that. That's
Yeah,
not actually true
it
at all.
wasn't the
So,
case. No,
yeah.
no. And
But
actually, there was a really interesting thread I saw on Twitter about how Denmark is. I'd maybe like to talk about this in a future podcast, but Denmark, where it's that has a very its national identity tied with helping each other, how they've come together, and how they've opened up because the population is basically pulled together, get vaccinated, and everything else. And that's really sort of skating on the surface, but it was really, really interesting, and I think that might be a good one to talk about at a future date. But let's move on to the non-COVID items, because really the news is just the lead up to our guest and a much more important topic. So this is, I mean, we talk about gene therapy, and I think this is worth touching on. Again, I think the headline overstates things a bit, but
correct.
I mean, it is a case of, I mean, gene therapy, they're trying to treat people who are, they have no other option.
Very sick people.
And
Yes.
so there are going to be hiccups in that. It's a new development where medicine is going. There are going to be bumps in the road, and this is a bump in the road as gene therapy moves forward. The headline is Fourth Boy Dies in Astellas Audentes Gene Therapy Trial, Raising Fresh Fears for the Field. As you read into the article, I don't see the fresh fears for the field. I see this as, yes, I mean, my heart goes out to the boy and the families. I mean, but ultimately, this. So this, let's just to backtrack a bit. These are people who suffer from myotubular myopathy, or XLMTM, and basically, so the life expectancy for people who are diagnosed with this is less than 2. This Audentes gene therapy, when it was in early tests, actually extended. They enabled these children to go off ventilators, and they hit other motor milestones, and some were even able to walk. So they gave real hope to the families, and that's not to say that they won't figure out what's going. There's something right about this therapy, but there's also, they haven't quite figured out in terms of the possibly the delivery of it. So they've had 4 deaths. What happened was because they saw these effects, they upped the dose in the hope that that would actually increase the effect of the medication. They saw 3 deaths at the high dose, so they backed off. All the deaths were sort of liver related, and they said those first 3 boys had, they had liver issues anyway, so that might have contributed to it. This 4th boy didn't have the same liver issues, but when on the lower dose, they start to see signals that there was possibly liver issues, and sadly he died. So the reason why I think it's important to sort of talk about these things and say the I try basically say this is the company will work through this. That obviously the families are totally on board with working through the company with
Yeah.
this, and they basically need to take a step back, figure out what the potential issues are, and figure out the path forward. So there may be hope for these families in the future. It's just right now there's a pause in that, and the hope that they saw has been put on hold for a while.
Yeah.
And I'll let you talk on that.
Yeah, John. I mean, these rare diseases, debility, really, myotubular myopathy. I'm not familiar with it, but clearly it's something that you die before the age of 2. So I think it is incredibly sad. I couldn't envision being a parent in the
Sure.
situation, but
Yeah.
also these individuals are saving others with myotubular
Sure.
myopathy, and
Yep.
that's really what this is about. This is and as an industry, we have to report these things, and it's good that we don't want to hide these. I'm glad it shows up in our readings, John, and I'm not glad because people are dying. That came out
No.
wrong. What I mean is this is how you know. If you look out throughout the history of any sort of effective therapy, there's always, and this is a really crude term, collateral damage, but it's not the case here. These children are actually really martyrs for others, heroes in some regard, because you said it best. This is an effective therapy. They just have to fine tune it
Sure.
to avoid these. And again, it's hard to tell if it's even the therapy, right?
Yes.
Obviously, the N numbers are so low, but there is data that says, hey, this probably. And when you're in a fragile state that these children are, anything that might cause a little bit of, say, liver swelling, where you and I might not have any issue, just get some higher liver enzymes or something, could lead to this. So, a tragic, horrible, but within that there is a silver lining, and this is something that I believe in the future will be something that cures these children. This is the cutting edge, John. This is where science is meeting the bed, right? And all of this is, it's hard to even talk about it, but because you try to put yourself in these positions as a parent and everything. But like I said, I think this particular trial is one that, I don't think it's the drug itself, the therapy itself is something that they will figure out, John.
Sure. I
And
agree.
it's just it's gut wrenching, but at the same token, I think it's something that we can't get to where we want to be to treat people without having some of this happen. So it's terrible, but it's also what leads us to the greatness that is treating and saving lives.
And I have to say, I mean, whenever you talk to any pharmaceutical, biotech, or whoever who are working on rare disease, it's really inspiring to hear what
It
they're
is.
doing to help people. I mean, it is.
John, I've had some videos sent to me. I've had letters sent to me. I've had
Sure.
the good
Yeah.
fortune of working in this space with children who have had Gaucher's disease and Pompe diseases, and been able to, the companies that we were supporting passed some of that along, and this falls right into that space. And I hope I don't sound cold in my, speak around how they're martyrs, they're heroes. These
Sure.
are, to me, they're heroes. These people, and they did not die for naught. That is not what happened here. And even if they hadn't got the therapy, their life expectancy was 2, right? So this
Exactly.
is,
Yeah.
It's tough one. And let's move on a little bit so
And
we can
and
get
and,
more with
and
our guests. But
And just to say, I think one of the parents who's quoted in that, who was a driver behind funding for this stuff, I mean, recognizes that fact that
Mhm.
this is to quote Hot Fuzz, this is for the greater good. I mean, I'm not. It really is. For the benefit of people
Yeah,
beyond them.
you
They
made me
hope that it
laugh.
would work for their children, but they really. I mean, it's a bigger picture than that.
Those that haven't seen Hot Fuzz, you got to go see that one. That's a good one. All right, John, we got a couple more. We got one more
Just
story, right?
one more, because this is So the title of this is a new way to infiltrate and destroy some of the deadliest drug-resistant bugs. And so we've talked about antibiotics, and obviously antibiotic resistance is a big concern. And the other side of the coin, which this article touches on, is that even companies who've successfully developed antibiotics that are effective in the last few years, the market isn't there. They can't make any money at them, and they've generally all gone bust. So this is actually a company called Kcas, who were spun out of AstraZeneca, who were looking at trying to deal with Pseudomonas, which routinely shows up at the top of WHO and CDC lists of drug-resistant pathogens. As an example, in 2017, 36,000 people in the US in US hospitals acquired the infection, and 2,700 died. So they had this in their sights. They wanted to try and develop a way of, they wanted to basically take it out. But what they were doing in the early days was taking an accepted antibiotic and tweaking its structure, and it was basically what looked good in a petri dish didn't translate to real life, so they weren't getting anywhere with it. So what they actually then did, they looked at what might be going wrong, and let's see if I can find the
Yeah,
piece.
it's the BP1, and is that what you're talking
Yes,
about?
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, so yeah, I actually, yeah, they
They went to
actually,
the cousins, right? They kind of went. That's how they describe it. They went after some of the protein cousins that
sure.
the
So basically,
Sillins. I'll call them the Sillins affected. Yeah, go ahead.
just step back a bit. There was a antibiotic called avibactam, which was approved. It didn't actually kill bacteria. Instead, it knocked out a defense bacteria so that antibiotics could still get in. So the they actually hit an enzyme called PB2 that wild bacteria residing in living, breathing humans can easily get rid of and continue breeding unabated. So, like I say, they attack PB2, let other things in, but this still didn't really reduce the resistant piece. So what Kcas science have done, have engineered it to go other two important cousins to PB. PBP2, which you call PB1, and PBP3, to attack both at once. So the bacteria is hit multiple different ways and then really struggles to react to it and obviously deal with these antibiotics. They've identified a candidate. The candidate looks hopeful in, I think, again in vitro and in mice. And the first candidate wasn't entirely effective because they were looking to make the molecule potent, but they weren't actually getting to the site of action. So they've actually by tweaking the molecular structure, they've gone to actually
Structure porin permutation relationship, or an
yes, they
SPPR. Yeah.
change the focus to optimize the molecule to glide easily through porins. The little
Mm-hmm.
pores bacteria have to shuttle chemicals in and out. So, to quote the article, it was like designing a bomber stealth technology before moving on to its guns or payloads. So this gets the antibiotic in, and then once it's in, there's other features that will then attack the Pseudomonas and some other similar pathogens. So it all looks hopeful. You've got people quoted in the article think this could be a game changer for antibiotics and potentially, get big money involved to really help deal with this, because this is a long ongoing problem.
Oh
It's
yeah.
just we've been ignoring it because there's not money to be made. So hopefully this will change things and be, helpful for us all in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things here. One, this is an unmet need, right? I think we
Yep.
kind of lost sight
Yep.
of it, and it's great. We were antibiotics have become less effective, and so this is a hope, right? And we've talked about some others, but this one's really starting to gain traction. But boy, are they clever, John, right? Like that's just incredible how they kind of pivoted to a cousin of the protein. They found some like stealth bomber stuff, just incredibly smart people. And that now I'm warm and fuzzy as we bring in our guests. But
There
it's
you go.
unbelievable how smart these scientists were to kind of engineer their way through it. I think of them as engineers in terms of their ability to kind of design something that can get around what's preventing it from working in the petri dish, or you call it a petri. I like the way you say that, John. So,
Yeah, Petri dish. Yeah, yeah.
petri, yeah, there you go. So with that, I think our guest has been patiently waiting. Sonia Hall, who's the CEO of BioKansas, is with us today. And Sonia, we hope you're ready to jump into our main portion. She's going to tell us about all the exciting things that BioKansas does. And personally, I'll just say I love BioKansas. I enjoy all that you do for the community here, and I attend many events, and I enjoy them thoroughly. And without further ado, Sonia, why don't you first, you can reintroduce yourself or say hello, start to say hello, and then we want you to jump right in and let us know who and what BioKansas is about and what their mission is. So with that, Sonia, welcome, and tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
everything.
we'll give you the floor.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I feel like my inner science nerd was just like completely fulfilled by all of the news updates. So thank you for that. That's appreciated.
You're very welcome.
So yeah, I guess I'll start by giving a little bit of an introduction to BioKansas. I know, Dom, you're pretty familiar with us, but I think a lot of people in our community here in Kansas City and the larger state of Kansas aren't really familiar, but we're a nonprofit organization whose mission is really to grow and sustain the bioscience ecosystem across not just Kansas City, but the entire state of Kansas, and then the larger Kansas City metro area. So we actually do that in a variety of different ways. Like you talked about, we have a lot of really meaningful events where we bring people together, kind of make connections, whether it's for careers or partnerships or just to learn. We have a lot of really highly specialized programs that we've developed and that we provide to the community as well. And then, of course, always education and advocacy for our industry. So that's kind of us in a nutshell.
I love the BioKansas, as you said, and it's interesting because you reach the whole state. You are reaching into some of the greater region here, not just inside Kansas, but with that, you some of the mission here is tell us a little bit about the Kansas ecosystem and the inclusion of diverse populations and how you're really moving things, because I've seen it grown personally here at a nice level. And you're right, there's still work to do for you, but tell us
Yeah,
about some of what's happening there.
can I just ask a question as someone who obviously doesn't know much about BioKansas? How long has it been going? When were you established?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the organization was actually founded back in 2003. So we've been around for nearly 20 years. And so we have a pretty long legacy of contributing and growing our industry here, contributing to and growing the industry here. I've only been in this position for just over 2 years. There were two CEOs prior to me, and each one of them, kind of left this really great kind of framework for the next one to build upon. And so, we're really kind of hitting, I don't know, just kind of an altered trajectory for our organization where we're really able to maximize our impact for the individuals and the companies and the institutions that are here within our region. Dom, as you asked kind of about that equity and inclusion piece, we've really focused very strongly on making sure that the primary underpinning of everything that we do within our organization leads to greater equity and inclusion within our industry. So for our career and professional development programs, which we have a robust offering of that we've all developed internally, our path and our mission is really to create pathways that are equitable and inclusive. So regardless of what type of a position you want to obtain within the biosciences, how do we create equity so that people feel like they belong and that there's a place for them to make those meaningful contributions, not just at the start of their career, but throughout their career. That can be, through a service-oriented type of approach with nonprofit organizations across the region, or maybe just within their company, right? Kind of highlighting how there are some systemic constraints that block equity, right, and access to opportunity, and figuring out ways together that we can kind of overcome that.
Yeah, that's great stuff. I mean, all of that is for your organization is designed for early career development, right? That's what you touched on, but all the way up to executive training, right? So that's some of, I think that's so important as really the mission is to begin to cultivate that so that some of the things like, and I'm going to go on to our next topic, right? That's the impact and benefit to the Kansas community. And that's something we've always had great, I've been here about 14 years and we've had, even that first year, I remember being at some early BioKansas things, and really there's just so much great science here, but some of it is Why don't you before I jump ahead a little bit, maybe tell us some of the impact and benefits to the Kansas community that you're working on. I talked about the professional development. Why don't you dive into that a little bit and tell us about how you can go? Your organization supports early career development to executive. Why don't you dig in a little bit and tell us about some of that?
Yeah, so I think one of the programs that's a really great reflection of that is a new program that we're developing for intercultural competency. So for this particular program, we bring early career scientists that are still in their training. So think graduate students, postdocs in higher education. And then we bring in academic leadership and corporate executives into the same room. And what they're going to do together is first learn about culture, right? And become more competent as individuals. But then they're going to look at these policies and processes that exist within our industry, and they're going to work together to identify ways that they themselves create barriers that lead to inequity and eliminate the possibility or decrease the magnitude of inclusion and belonging that exists. I think where that program goes even further is then that those groups of individuals work together to reimagine what these policies and processes should look like so that those barriers and those constraints are then removed or dramatically lessened. And so that's a way that we bring all of those career stages together into one room to solve a challenge that our entire industry is facing, and it benefits the entire ecosystem. Another one that we have is our industry immersion program. So for this, we send students out to 7 different sites. So they learn about the entire innovation pipeline from the moment of a discovery through that entire commercialization pathway to where it enters the market. And they do that embedded within these industry companies. And so Kcas was one of the participating companies, as you know, that we had this year. And it's just a really great way to kind of unify the community together, but also, again, provide education to both early career scientists, mid-career scientists, and then advanced scientists as well. We had one company that actually flew employees in from around the country because they thought not only is this a great training opportunity for these students, but we can learn from it as well and learn to communicate better across our departments and our divisions. So,
So Sonia, can I again come in from a position of not really being familiar with BioKansas? So how do people get like these early career professionals? How do they become involved with BioKansas?
Yeah, so we have a few different ways that people become involved. So sometimes a company or an academic institution is a member of our organization.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, those are the groups that are really investing in our mission. So they're building this ecosystem with us. So by their membership dues, right, we're able to reinvest that into these programs and serve the broader community. There's additional benefits, of course, with a membership, but that also gives us the possibility of supporting scientists or non-scientists that work within our industry, regardless of their affiliation with a company that's a member. So if we have, say, a student at an academic institution or an employee who's, a scientist one at a company and they don't have access to BioKansas membership benefits, we can subsidize the cost of that programming or eliminate the cost of the programming, all because of the contributions that our members and sponsors provide to us.
Yeah, and Sonia, I'll give you a shout out. In the 2 years you've been here, there's been a huge uptick in just the number of events, the participation level, and the energy. So you're knocking it out of the park. But I think what you're doing is amazing. If I would have, it would have been so beneficial to have something like this when I had been a young scientist. And I think the point I want to really emphasize is it's so powerful that not only are the younger early career people benefiting, but you're really helping the executives and the higher ups to understand some of what they can do to remove some of those barriers to kind of relate better, right? That's what this is really. It's a mutual growth for all parties involved. And I'll say at Kcas, the number one reason why people work at us is our diversity and our culture. So I know we're a big part of this and we love to contribute. So with that, maybe tell us the next item here is, and I thought this was fascinating, right? Unless you had more, Sonia, I don't want to usurp this, but if you agree, we'll go on to the, if you want to round out anything else. Otherwise, I'm going to ask you about your scientific writing thing, because I think this is great as well.
Sure. I love talking about our scientific writing program. So this program was developed with financial support from the Borough's Wellcome Fund, as was our industry immersion program. And this is a way for graduate students, postdocs, and early career faculty to really learn how to implement a project management-based approach to tackling complex writing projects. So let's bring a little bit of business into those academic environments, essentially was the impetus for this. And they do this in a way where not only are they getting the training in the project management itself, but they also get support for editing and peer review. They learn how to mentor up and mentor down and mentor to the sides as well. A lot of the times, early career scientists report that this type of in-depth writing support isn't available within their academic institutions. And we know that our academic scientists that are in our academic institutions are highly specialized in their fields, and keeping them focused on the science is so important. And the academic institutions don't always have the funding to develop robust programs internally. And so what we're doing is taking a community-based approach to provide that training and that support across our entire state. The thing that's really cool about this program is it's virtual. So we've actually had a number of students that are outside of the region. And I think the benefit that comes back to our members and our sponsors and our region in general is that now we're sending this more holistic message to these other scientists from other parts of the country and saying, this is a really amazing community-focused place to come and live and work.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
great
not only
stuff.
do they get that training, but
Sure.
there's also a little bit of workforce development efforts that are happening as well.
It's great. And John, go ahead if you have
No,
some questions, because
I,
I think it's fascinating. Go ahead, please.
I just said sure. I didn't have anything to add to that. I mean,
No,
I think it sort of plays on the, when I sort of said, having had no contact with Kansas for 25 years, all of a sudden I can't avoid it. But I think that's excellent where you're dealing with people out of state, and they're going to help them start learning what Kansas has, and possibly bring qualified people into the area to help grow things as well. So yeah, it sounds really, really good.
yeah, and actually it leads into what was one of the biggest challenges when I moved here, and it was, how do we attract talent and how do we retain it?
Mm-hmm.
And Sonia, I think you're on the precipice of kind of solving this for the region, because we are a rich drug development region for sure. And so one of the things I know in my years here, it's been a struggle to see some companies that are innovators kind of start to hit some success, and then immediately they get gobbled up and they're gone, right? So this program you're doing with scientific writing is one way to bring some in, which is great. But maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what we're trying to do to focus on attracting. I think you touched on it, but please dig deeper. And then what we're doing to retain, because this is really, I think, a lot of the, I don't know if it's the mission, but it's certainly the thing that is going to allow Kansas City to continue to be, I think we're like the 11th largest CRO space city in the country, but how we're going to crack the top 10, and really, I feel like we already are on the map, but kind of elevate to be like, top 5, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so one of the efforts that we're undertaking in partnership with our Workforce Committee is we're sending out a survey. It's a national survey, and what we're trying to understand is kind of that career decision-making process that high school students, undergraduates, graduates, postdocs follow when they're trying to decide, well, where is it that I'm going to go and live and work after I finish my training or my education? What we hope to obtain from that is identification of what those barriers are, what those things are that we need to be communicating to them to kind of draw them here into our region. So then we'll be able to take that data and integrate it into not just what we do, but the messaging that our companies are sending, and how our region more holistically is communicating to those individuals. So we can either retain them here or bring them to our region. We're just a huge exporter of talent, and we've got to figure out a way to kind of stop that loss of I guess, just kind of intellect and
Mm-hmm.
talent. Yeah, so we're also partnering with Kcas Rising. So I'm the co-chair of Kcas Rising's Biologics Task Force. So we're looking closely at what it's going to take to build the biologics industry here within the Kansas City metro area. As part of that, we're undertaking a workforce data collection and gap analysis. And we want to be able to identify, again, more holistically, what are the barriers? What do we have here right now? And then come up with actionable ways that we can move forward and kind of grow that. When it comes to the CROs more specifically, we're actually working with John Bucksath at Kcas to put together a CRO, CMO, CDMO community forum to kind of have not just the workforce conversations, but larger conversations about what we need to do as a region to grow the visibility and the branding of that collection of assets that we have here. Because, we have really skilled companies like Kcas, but also ones that work in areas that Kcas doesn't, right? That
Mm-hmm.
span that entire pipeline. And I think a lot of people around the country aren't quite aware of that, whether we're talking about somebody who would come here to work or somebody who needs some contract research done to
Yeah,
scale up their ability to meet those timelines.
I mean, talking as again, someone who had nothing to do with Kansas City before a couple of years ago, I had no idea of the depth of either pharma or biotechs or contract labs that were in the area. It's been an eye opener to me to see who all is there, because it was never on my radar.
Yeah, and I think it's so important, I think, to hear you say that, right? And then I think the call to action from things like that is, then how do you contribute to changing that, right? Perception. And so by doing things like this podcast, you're making a really valuable contribution to start to change that perception and that lack of awareness. So, we definitely appreciate that. And I just encourage you to keep pushing.
Well, we enjoy it, and thank you for those kind words. But I think I want to highlight a couple things you said that I think are really how you're overcoming some of the challenges to keeping people here and attracting them. You're starting so early, right? You talked about high school. I know we do a lot with high school students here. That I think that's a good way to start. There's a big push for STEM and all that, but there's that gap in terms of what can I do with it. And you're kind of filling it before they get to the crossroad, right? Before they're in grad school or on the way out, you're getting them thinking way upstream. And then you're using data. It's incredible how organized and how data driven you are in something that has historically been evasive in terms of, I've sat with some others and we've looked at ways, and you've really come up with solutions, and you're acquiring information. You're out there gathering that, so you start to be able to build how you can solve all of this. More importantly, there's a great foundation here because we're like one of the best kept secrets when it comes to CROs, and I think that's being that type of mindset that I have is being overcome by your promoting us outside the region, specifically BioKansas, and I really do think we're starting to, as a region, and I like the term ecosystem, starting to gather some eyes across the nation, maybe even the world. And it's not just one thing, right? It's animal health. It's it's very diverse here, right, Sonia? It's just a very diverse area. There's not just CROs, but the CROs that are in the drug development space like us. There's first in human, many sites. There's animal health. There's all sorts of environmental sciences, right? Like the list is long and it's very rich. And I love what you're doing. So, I don't know, any last thoughts? And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of your networking events and opportunities. But before we move off of what you're doing as an organization, your mission, your ecosystem, the impact and the retention, any last thoughts on that before we go to our, one of our last items?
Not that I can think of, really. I will just say, I think that data collection aspect, it is so important. Otherwise, we can't put the guidepost in the right place, right? We're kind of wandering without a
Yeah,
lens.
you don't have a target. Yeah, you've overcome one of the biggest things. You've got a target. Maybe you haven't acquired the target. Sorry to interrupt you there, but that data, and I'm so impressed with what you're doing. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, I think, our board, when they hired me, they knew that they were bringing in a scientist, and by nature, I'm just very data oriented. And, Lynn, our director of strategic engagement, she's also a scientist. Alex Irwin, who's done a lot of our professional development programming, she's a scientist as well. And then we have individuals on our team that aren't scientists. And when we all kind of come together, we see the value of the data. We know how to collect the data. And then together we're able to implement it, especially when we have the board that we have that really understands the region and the ecosystem here. I will say that a lot of really important aspects of what we do too are informed by the work of groups like the Graduate Career Consortium, which is a national collection of academic administrators who work in career and professional development for higher education students. The data that they collect is something that we can kind of build off of and begin to really amplify not just their work, but what we're doing as well. And so that national reach and that national impact becomes even more and more realistic when we're able to couple onto things like the work that they're doing. And they're based all over the country at the various academic institutions.
Yeah, no, it's great stuff, Sonia. It's really good, and I think as there's more and more people who are looking to leave maybe the coast, I think cities like Kansas City are going to benefit from that as well. But you got to reach them, and that's what you're penetrating very nicely with these programs that I think. I don't want to bash your predecessors per se, but I think you've really, you're being a little humble about it, but you've come in and really identified I'm so impressed. At one point we were just like, oh, maybe we can have keg parties and barbecues and jazz things to bring people. You're going out and methodically doing it. So it's just your leadership, your team. The people you mentioned, they really are motivated, and clearly there's great leadership at the BioKansas. So hats off to you. Why don't if you don't mind, we're going to move right into that. Tell us about all the great things you're doing, because I've seen some upticks. I've missed a couple of them. I know your local brewery thing is awesome. I only made a few of them, but why don't you tell us some of your networking events and opportunities?
Yeah. So we've been doing a summer brewery tour series. We've visited a microbrewery each month and kind of brought the community together to just kind of enjoy one of the earliest biomanufacturers in the industry. And that's been really fantastic. Every one of them sold out. Our most recent one, which happens next Wednesday, that one sold out, I believe, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So they're definitely very, very popular. We try to keep them small and intimate so that people can really kind of get to know each other. We have a series of bio breaks. So we basically do roughly one a quarter. Sometimes we have a couple of extras. And this is a great opportunity for people to kind of come in and really get to meet with the leadership of our organization. Most of them take place directly after our board meetings. So our board of directors are there. We have people that are leaders on our committees that attend, individuals from our membership, and then also non-members as well. And we've seen a lot of partnerships form from that. Job opportunities kind of arise. And so those are always really exciting. And we try to have them not just here in the Kansas City area, but all over the state. So, our goal is always to have like one in Topeka or Manhattan or Wichita, and then kind of rotate around.
That's another addition you've done as well. I think before it might have been 1 in 10 was outside of Kansas City, and you're making it more a good percentage of them I see are outside of Kansas City. But being a Bostonian, I don't like to drive, but maybe for you, I will make that, long hour trip to Wichita or something, right? But that is great. And I know that at these events, it's not just beer drinking. It's great stuff. There's a ton of activity. You can see the networking going on. It's very involved scientific conversations. And as you said, there's certainly, I know that we like them because it is an opportunity to just introduce people to KCS and who and what we're about. So it's been very good stuff. And then I think sometimes there's PowerPoint presentations you give. It's just a lot of times some of the events are actually more geared towards someone showcasing something. I know at like the BioKansas golf outing, which I've attended for 9 of the 10, which I love a lot. And at that point you gave some talks and stuff. So I guess I'm emphasizing that there's always an element of education to what you're doing. So it's wonderful stuff, and you should be very proud of the growth that you've seen. It's been 2 years under your leadership, and certainly individuals such as myself have felt it. And I know some of the people I go to the events with are very impressed with you as well. There seems to be a lot of, you're on the rise. You're doing things that are very attractive to people in science. And I don't know, we don't have any more topics to really discuss unless you want to tease us with what you have. But I'll say it's been a pleasure. And again, you should be applauded for your efforts, and whatever KCS and myself personally can do to help support them, you just let me know. I'll whatever we can do. I really, as you know, I love it, and I'm very impressed with everything you're doing. And with that, maybe I'll let someone else talk.
Yeah, well, I will preview 2 somewhat exciting events that we have coming up for the summer of 2022. So we have 2 conferences that we'll be hosting. The first one is a research and recruitment conference. And so for this, we'll be bringing in scientists from around the region and around the country, early career scientists, and they'll come to the conference to present their work. And for the last half of the conference, they'll actually be learning a lot about the ecosystem that we have here in Kansas and Missouri. So we'll be matching them with employers and academic institutions to not only learn more, but to really get to know each other. And what we hope we can accomplish through this particular conference is that the early career scientists that are in attendance kind of get excited about the culture and the lifestyle that we have here in the Kansas City area and the larger states that encompass it, and that they decide to come to live and work. And so that we're extremely excited about. So we're in the process of raising funding and applying for grants to help support that particular conference. The second conference that we're hosting happens right around the same time. It's in August of 2022, and it is an Innovations in Ag Tech conference. So we're partnering with this nonprofit organization called Grand Farm. They're based out of Fargo, North Dakota, and they're really making some great waves in their region. If somebody is involved in innovations in ag tech, they're most likely aware of Grand Farm. And if they're not, they need to be. So we'll be working with them to kind of populate that conference. We're looking to bring in about 250 attendees, anything from biologics in agriculture, looking at space ag and autonomous vehicles on the farm. And how do we connect the farm and all of the intricate workings on it to the cloud so that we can begin to do more data analysis to increase yields and efficiency. And so we're really excited about those 2 conferences, and they'll both lead into this very large public event that we're doing that we haven't made a formal announcement about yet, but we will be in the coming weeks. And we just think it's going to be a really great way to get a lot of eyes on Kansas City and a way to expose the innovation ecosystem that we have here.
No, great stuff. I always jump in. I'll let John maybe have some comments if he wants to say anything. But I'm sitting here glowing with the thought of you maybe being able to achieve some of the things that for decades have, or at least for about a decade, have been somewhat elusive to Kansas City. It sounds like you're on your way. John, any thoughts?
I don't know much to add. It all sounds really exciting, and yeah, it sounds like a great resource to have in the area. It sounds really impressive.
Yeah. So with that, John, we're going to keep along our tradition of putting our guest in the hot seat. And before I do that, maybe Sonia, do you have any? We're going to give you a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much, Sonia, for giving us your time and having the opportunity to talk to you. But is there anything more that you want to say before we move on to the final closeout?
No, just, thank you for the ongoing support from Kcas and from all of our other members and sponsors as well, of course. But yeah, it was a great opportunity to be here today and to get to share a bit about the work that our region's investing in us doing.
And we're always happy to have you back when you have more to talk about, particularly once you've got once you've made the first announcement about what's happening next year, if you want to come and talk further about the details, we're happy to have you back on the podcast.
That would be great. I'd look forward to it.
Yeah, we'll certainly do whatever we can to promote that. So with that, it's time for the hot seat. Are you ready, Sonia, for the hot seat?
I'll do my best.
Heat it up. All right, and we're going to start with a softball. What's your favorite podcast episode?
So you recently had one that was on the importance of program management. Given the number of programs that we run and the vital importance of, cross communication for all of those things, that one was just very near and dear to my heart. So
excellent. Chris Young will appreciate that. Go ahead, John.
It's funny. We just had the message yesterday from someone else at Kcas saying how much they enjoyed that episode too. So Chris Young's a star in the making, and maybe he'll be pushing us off this and taking over. But
actually, I got my wife is a program manager, and she enjoyed that one as well. But no, that doesn't surprise me, Sonia, that you appreciate the value of that one. So great stuff. Go ahead, John.
So just for people's reference, that was podcast number 45. So that was it was great to have Chris on, and again, with all our guests, we'd happily have all them on at any time again, and Chris would definitely be on that list.
Yeah, and we're going to move on to our next hot seat question, because it gets harder from here, Sonia. What is your favorite dish? Because we got to talk about food. If you're a scientist, you got to eat. So what's your favorite dish?
Yeah, this is not going to be a good question. So I'm basically a vegan, but the rest of my family is not. So the number of horrible disasters in the kitchen that I've had just cannot be understated. I guess my favorite dish to make would have to be any type of pasta that combines fresh vegetables, garlic, and then just fresh pasta. I'm kind of boring, but that would be it.
So how do you balance the vegan diets with other people eating different from that? That's really interesting to me.
Well, I guess the question is, do I balance it or do they?
Do they? Sure, absolutely. I don't mind who does it. I'm interested as to how you approach it.
Yeah. So I guess it's really, you can think about having one large meal, and then I just eat the side items, and then people enjoy the rest. So yeah, it's pretty easy to manage, I think, for the most part. But maybe if you asked my husband, he might feel a little bit different.
So can I ask? I'm going to go completely off base here. How have you seen, vegetarian, vegan options in terms of restaurants? What's been your observation of that over the last few years?
I think we're seeing more and more of them now. The one thing that I've always found is that restaurants are extremely flexible. So if you just, say, oh, this dish sounds really great, can you just leave this item out? They're normally more than willing to do it. But there's more fusions of culture coming together in the dishes that I see, especially here. And that allows, I think, just naturally for more vegetarian and vegan options to be available.
Yeah, I'm going to add, there's been a major uptick here in the last couple of years. I mean, we're in the barbecue belt, right? And even those places now have a couple, it's not a huge option for vegans, but definitely one or two items on almost every menu has it. And then I think, it's funny. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I'll tell a little side story. I grew up, Massachusetts didn't always have a lot of red meat, a lot of seafood and so forth. So I like eating steak, and I'm at the dinner table and I'm like, yeah, my family was kind of like, oh, we're tired of steak. We'd like to eat it once a month. And I heard, yeah, I agree. We like to eat it once a week. So I have cut down on my red meat is what I'm saying. And I've been doing more, at least fishes and even vegan dishes. And Sonia, you talked about your bland pasta. Well, that sounds delicious to me. I love using any sort of asparaguses and zucchinis. I've been grilling zucchinis and things like that, and then popping them into the pasta. And sometimes I put some clams or shrimp and stuff. But the secret sauce, Sonia, is always a little bit of good Parmesan Romano mix to top it off, right? You add some cheese to it.
Yeah. So there's your break with the vegan piece, because the cheese would be out, I assume.
Oh, it is. I forget how tight and narrow I heard her laugh, and now I know why. You can't add that, right? I guess I'm I guess I'm naive to what I think a vegan is. Me, I'm just eating vegetables means I'm a vegan, and I'm so lost, right?
No, there's definitely a lot more control than
And,
that.
and I've definitely been eating my uni pizza grill. I've been using a little bit, and I don't know if you
Oh,
know
I
what that
want one
is,
of
Sonia.
those so bad.
Oh, they're great. I finally got the right like little paddle for it. I had one that was too big, so I've used it maybe 4 times, and they make great mozzarella marguerite pizzas, right? Like I know you don't. Again, I keep talking about cheeses, but you'll love it if you get one. So you're not
So
out of
yeah,
mozzarella.
I'm still gonna jump in here. So
Okay.
yeah, I've got my own other tangent. So when you talk about wanting to travel, etc., one of the things I really want to do at some point is go back to the UK. Because obviously that's been off the menu for a couple of years now. And one of my my favorite restaurant in the UK is a place called Loncloom in Cumbria. So it's in the northwest of England. And Loncloom, it started off in an old stone blacksmith shop in a village called Cartmel, and as the restaurant grew, they acquired a local farm, so they grow their own vegetables and fruit, which then feature in the dishes. And I have to say, I'm fairly carnivorous in taste, particularly more gamey type things. But a lot of their vegetable based dishes are just sensational. So it's really, having gone there a few times has really opened my eyes to what you can do with vegetables. And I think as a family, we do tend to have much more balance towards eating sort of vegetarian dishes, rather than always just focusing on a meat protein and then two veg with it. It has changed how we eat.
That's fantastic. You'll have to send me that information. My husband and I are making another trip to the UK early spring, so we'll have to check it out.
It's not cheap, but it is fantastic. It is. I'll happily send it on.
Sounds great.
Yeah,
It's
and
like
as I
one of those. I eat there once and then think, well, maybe could do it in a couple of years' time, and yeah, but I absolutely love the place. Anyway,
Yeah,
we can
no,
move on.
this is a good talk, and I know that as I sit here, I'm starting to get a little hungry, and I'm anyhow. Well, Sonia, we got one more question. It's a Friday. What's your favorite adult beverage?
Well, I guess I'm kind of boring. Just like a little bit of vodka, seltzer water, or soda water, and a twist of lime. That would kind of
Oh,
be my go-to. Just something
that
light and fresh.
yeah,
No sugar.
that's not boring at all. No, and you say did you say lemon or lime you like in there?
I like lime myself.
Lime. Okay, not boring at all. That's my go-to when I'm trying to I don't know. I don't know if lose weight's the right thing. Maybe fit back into my pants, right? So that's a good one. That's definitely preferred. One of my preferred. I like it with club soda, lemon, and lime. But anyhow, do you have a
But
particular vodka you like? How
I'm,
about a vodka?
yeah, I'm going to jump in on that if you don't mind. Actually,
Sure.
no, answer if there's a vodka you like, then I've got something I want to throw in.
I usually try to alternate between the local distilleries here and Kansas City. So, like Lifted Spirits is one of the places that we'll buy things from, and there's a whole bunch of other really great ones too.
Yeah, is that like the Roger? What's the other one here?
Rieger,
Timstown. Yeah, Rieger, right?
yeah,
And
Yeah,
Tomstown, I think is what it
Tomstown.
is.
Mhm.
I like the Rieger gin. Yeah, we've had that. So
Nice.
on the vodka front, if you do make it over to the UK, I've got another another bit of advice to throw out. Um, my father grew up in rural Herefordshire, so he was northwest north of Hereford, I think, northeast. Anyway, around Hereford, his parents ran a local post office, and actually, we used to go there every summer, visit relations, things like that. And just in that area, there was a guy who he was a potato farmer, and he set up so he had an excess of potatoes, and he started making. Have you ever seen Tyrrell's potato chips at all? If you haven't, he made potato chips which he sold nationally and internationally, made money from that, but then sold it on to other a venture firm, etc. And that then Tyrrell's went off with a life of its own, but he still had the surfeit of potatoes. So he actually then turned round and started making potato vodka. And the place is now called Chase Distillery, and it's out in the middle of nowhere, but their vodka is absolutely fantastic. And if you're flying into the UK, you can pick it up duty free. And I'd totally advise you to go with Chase vodka. And if you ever want to do flavored vodka, they do a marmalade one, which is also really, really drinkable.
Good stuff.
Interesting. We'll have to check it out while we're there. I don't know. I might be pushing my comfort level with the marmalade. Like I said,
No, absolutely. But honestly,
basic.
they just the straight potato vodka is excellent. It's one of those things you can just drink it straight. You don't need mixers, things like that. It's a very, very smooth and lush vodka. It's lovely.
Nice.
Well, Sonia, maybe next time I see you, I like what you just said. I'm going to stretch myself with the marmalade. Maybe I'll push you and try you on some other drink. No, I'm just
there you go.
No, that's great stuff. We have one final question we always end with. We love this one. You got any weekend plans? You doing anything fun this weekend?
Well, normally I don't plan my weekends in advance because my weeks are so planned. So that's my chance to kind of recover. But my husband and I go out for breakfast pretty much every Saturday morning. And then our colleague, Alex Irwin, is coming up from Springfield, Missouri. So I, and Lynn are going to get together for breakfast on Sunday. Those are the two things I know I'll do. And other than that, it'll be cleaning, organizing, and just enjoying the sunshine, probably.
Yeah, it's supposed to be nice here. No, that's great. And I know Alex well. She's great. John, you want to tell us, you got anything exciting? And John has been quite busy with marriage, his son getting married and stuff. Are you going to calm down this weekend, John, or what are you doing?
So last weekend was the quiet one after my son's wedding. I think we haven't got much planned. I think really the next step for us is in the run up to my son's wedding. My daughter got engaged, but that sort of kind of got lost in all this to-ing and fro with my son's wedding. So we're actually going to take a step back and try and start coordinating at least something to commemorate their engagement in terms of get together with friends and family. So I suspect it will probably start moving on that this weekend. Other than that, I don't think there's much planned. Got a bunch of plants turned up in the mail a couple of days ago, so those need to go in the ground. Plus, I've also fallen into the trap of buying more autumn bulbs, so those need to be planted too. But I think that's really it.
Well, we are definitely rocking it. I mean, I got a jam-packed weekend as well. My son turned 16 last weekend, and so one of his gifts was an upgrade to his car stereo. So we're going to try to get that installed this weekend, and that'll be a lot of fun.
Yes, so on the birthday from my youngest, his birthday's on Tuesday, so he'll have a bunch of friends round over the weekend too. So I mean that takes Saturday night out of my hands. I'll just let them go and do what they need to do,
Well, that sounds like an excuse to go drink with them, John, right?
Yeah,
but
it depends whether it's inside or outside, because right now we seem to be deluged with mosquitoes, and certainly after a certain time of the evening, I don't want to be out there.
Gotcha. But no, car stereos have changed a lot. If you haven't seen, they're now like iPads, right? So it was an eye-popping experience to shop for them, overwhelming at times, and suddenly we are going to maybe get that installed. And like I said, it's a big weekend. I need resupplies. I think I'm going to go down to the River Mart area. That's where I like to go, Sonia, if you've been down there. And
yeah,
I like to pick up, I'm like a kid in a candy store down there, whatever I can get my hands on, fresh produce to olive oils to, I don't know, whatever cheeses and so forth. But I need a little bit of resupply. So those are my big plans. And then, you mentioned breakfast. I do breakfast every Sunday with the family. And that's something that I like that you said that. I sometimes forget, but that's a big part of my life too. Every Sunday we, go to mass, and then we hit the Big Biscuit or something like that out here, nice. Some sort of place. So no, it sounds, sometimes we have exciting stuff, but it is just life. It seems like, and of course I'll watch some football, right? And there's some great. Are you a soccer fan at all, Sonia? Or a sports fan at all?
Well, I went to a Sporting KC game once, and I really enjoyed it, but I don't follow sports regularly. I'm more of a music follower. So on Wednesday night, we went to see Glass Animals out at the Azura Amphitheater. So anytime there's live music in the area, we'll normally be there.
Yeah,
But
been a big uptick here locally. A lot of the local bars have some great musicians in them now. It's invigorating to see, like, the Barley's down the street from me. Suddenly the musicians are fantastic. So it's been somewhat of an uptick. You mentioned Sporting. I should give a shout out. Massive match Sunday night between first place Sporting and second place Seattle. I will be at that game in the Cauldron, screaming my head off, because I love my Sporting KC. Yeah. No, it's a big match, though. I hope you can hear it in me. It's a huge match for first place in the Western Conference. These are the two teams that everybody's thinking will win the conference. And, if you don't know about soccer, right, you only play one here, one there. And so it's going to be electric, and I'm very, very excited, amped up. Sonia, you're off the hot seat. Thank you for joining us for our 49th episode. We are so excited to have our 50th episode next week, and stay tuned for that one. We'll have lots of special guests, we hope.